Hello everyone and welcome back to Baron's Den for another Baron's Den Top 10, and we're finally, after many months, on to passing skills. The least loved tree, I think it's fair to say, when it comes to all the skill trees. The one that people probably dip into the least and have been fairly critical about, I think, since 2020 came out. I like some skills in there. There are some good skills in there. There are some very niche skills in there. And there are a couple of just awful skills in there. So let's go through them and let's see what the top 10 are. But before we do the top 10, we need to talk about the two that didn't make it. So what are the two honourable mentions? Well, I call them honourable mentions, but they're not really, are they? Because I'm saying that they are the two worst in the tree. But the first one I'm going to talk about is Hail Mary Pass. So, what is Hail Mary Pass? When this player performs a pass action or a throw bomb, the target can be at any square on the pitch. Pass action using this skill is neither accurate nor can it be intercepted by an opposition player. Cannot be used in a blizzard. So, on the face of it, that looks really cool. It used to be great in 2016. Useful to pair up with diving catch. You had a reasonable-ish chance of getting it to a player who had diving catch. And literally going coast to coast with that play. The other way it was useful is you could, if you had quick players and your opponent had left no players back in their half, you could almost Hail Mary pass into the opposition half and then have one of your players run on with the hope of picking it up the following turn. Or again, useful if you're just trying to save the game at the end and you just want to get rid of the ball quickly. So it used to have a lot of really good uses. But it was killed stone dead by the FAQ that said you have to apply the modifier that you'd apply with the range ruler. So back in the old days, it was a 2+. It was always inaccurate. It was always going to scatter 3 times. But it was a 2+. 1 would be a fumble. 2+ would be the inaccurate pass. At no point was there a wildly inaccurate. Whereas now they're saying that obviously you apply the modifier for range. So most Hail Mary passes are going to be long bomb or more territory. You're going to be applying a -3. So all of a sudden, take this Wood Elf thrower here, 2+ passer, 3+, 4+, is going to, if I'm right in what I'm thinking, even on a 4+, that would be wildly inaccurate for a Wood Elf thrower, because it would drop to 1 as per the modifiers. So who is going to want to use Hail Mary Pass? You know, it's just been killed stone dead. And if I implore Games Workshop to do anything with a future FAQ or even a new edition of the game, please fix it back so there's a point in having Hail Mary Pass. Because right now, I can't have it anywhere near the top 10 if it's just not usable. I mean, it was always niche edge case when it was remotely useful, whereas now it's just a waste of time. Okay, and the other mention I'm going to give is Fumblerooski. So over here, Fumblerooski. When this player performs a move or blitz action, and he's carrying the ball, he can choose to abandon the ball. The ball can be placed in any of the squares just vacated. The ball does not bounce and there is no turnover. So, I just don't see the point in this one. I think my teeny tiny brain can't really think of a way to use this effectively. In most cases, I'd prefer to hand off. I suppose if, you'd have to trot back into your own half to pick up the ball, but you wanted a quick play, and you couldn't get the player who picked up the ball to get to the next player who's passing it on, you could get that other player to come and get... I don't know. I suppose, as well, it's not then a pass, is it? And it's not a handoff. So you could do... Potentially, someone could pick up the ball and then move it forward, drop it. Someone else could then pick it up and hand it off, and then somebody else could move it and pass it if you needed it. So I suppose it is a way of creating stretch plays, and it's a way of, I suppose, getting the ball off somebody. But most of the people who are going to get Fumblerooski aren't people that you would necessarily hate to have the ball anyway. So yeah, just a bit of an odd one. I've never seen it used against me. I've played 380 odd games on Blood Bowl 3. No one's ever used it. Ever. And I've never seen it, really. I don't remember hovering over anyone seeing Fumblerooski. I'm sure I've heard a few more people using it in the tabletop. But again, in my tabletop exploits, I haven't seen anyone use it either. So that's why I can't really put it in the top 10. Okay, in at number 10, it's Cloudburster. So when this player tries a long pass or a long bomb, you can force the reroll of a successful interfere by the opposition manager. So this is intense spot because every once in a million years, this will be really useful. And it is slightly more useful depending on the race you're playing. If you're playing High Elf, for example, or Elven Union, this could be a bit more useful because you are going to be doing more long passes or even long bombs. And if you're playing against an Elfie team or a team with what's he's facing, Pogo Boy, what's he called, Scrapasaur Head, you might. Oh no, he can just get it auto, can't he, with his skill? But you know what I mean. Players who are going to be good at intercepting, only with very long legs, this could be useful. But chances of that are really rare. I very rarely see anyone long passing or long bombing in the first instance, and even then, not many people succeed with interceptions anyway. It's not like interceptions are a problem in the game, so this skill solves that problem. Interceptions are really rare. And I suppose when it actually works against you, if you did have this skill, you'd be able to cancel that out. But then that's, that's a load of SPP and team value you're putting into a skill that is very rarely going to come up. So whilst on the face of it, I'm not against the idea of it, it's just in practicality, it's just not going to come up very often. Okay, number 9, running pass. Now, this one might be more controversial. Other people might prefer this one slightly higher up. If this player makes a quick pass, his activation does not end once the pass is resolved. So, again, I think I've played Imperial Nobility with their running pass throwers, but I've not really seen people utilising running pass. I haven't played them a lot because people love to play Orcs and Dwarves. But even so, I've not seen anyone pick this. I've not seen anyone utilise this. You can always theory bash the way to use this, but when it comes to it, and you're playing a game of Blood Bowl, is this something you really want to do? I tell a lie, I have seen it used with bombers. I think with bombers, it's useful because it means you can move your bomber and bomb, which is actually really useful. As long as that's implemented correctly in Blood Bowl. I'm not sure I've seen it in the video game, but I have seen it in the tabletop. So, yes, very useful for a bomber. We'll give that. But again, that's incredibly niche then, isn't it? I might push that one up the order if I was seeing it used a bit more and I could see how to use it well. Okay, number 8. It's Safe Pass. So, what is Safe Pass? Safe Pass. If this player fumbles a pass action, he keeps the ball and his activation ends. So, yeah. Basically, it's guarding you against a fumble. If you've got this skill, you'll never fumble. Which, actually, this is the first one where I'd be quite glad of that if I started with it, or possibly if I randomed it on a thrower. Because actually, that keeps that ball safe. No matter what, if you need to pass, you're not going to be dropping it on the floor. The downside to it, of course, is that your player that you don't want the ball, which is the reason you're passing in the first place, still has the ball. And if he's under threat, he's, the fact that he's got it in his hands doesn't necessarily mean it's a lot safer than it would have been if it was on the floor anyway. So it's just a case of whether actually this situation comes up a lot, and even when it does, is it that much better than it being on the floor? It is definitely a little bit better, but again, not enough for me to put this higher up the order. But we'll say, I think, was it the High Elf thrower that comes with Safe Pass? It's a nice one to have. It's one of there's quite a few skills in all the skill trees where you think, I'm never going to choose you, and even if I random you, I'd be a bit disappointed. But if you're rolled into my player for free, then I'd be happy to have it. So when High Elves get redone, I can't remember if it's in the team. I think it is in the Team of Legend. But it would be nice to have a thrower with that inbuilt, because then you feel like you're not, it's baked into the cost of the player. It's not necessarily adding too much to the team value. So Safe Pass, number 8. Number 7, Cannoneer. Now, a lot of people hate Cannoneer. I've got a bit of a soft spot for it. So, Cannoneer and Accurate used to be the same skill, which was basically +1 to passing. And then in order to fill out the skill slots, and perhaps to reduce the power of the old Accurate, they separated it into Accurate and to Cannoneer. So Accurate is your +1 to your short and quick, and Cannoneer is a +1 for your long and pass and long bombs. So the downside is Cannoneer is only going to be very useful on throwers, and we're talking 2+ throwers, or preferably 1+ throwers. People who are going to make it very attractive to do those long throws. Because most of the time, if you're playing a team, like your elf teams, or even a Skaven team that could make use of long bombs, it's still probably easier and better to run the ball along, or maybe use a cheeky quick pass or short pass. Going long doesn't necessarily make the best way to play, unless you can get that long bomb down to 4+3+ territory with the pass skill. Then, all of a sudden, you can make life really difficult for your opposition, because you can flood their half with potential catchers, and then they can only blitz one. And if you're that Elven Union team with Nerves of Steel catchers, it can be a real nightmare just to try and stop them. In the Fumble League I played recently, I played against High Elves who had Cannoneer, and it certainly does make you consider your defensive line. However, I can't put it any higher, because very rarely are you going to see players with this skill, because they already need to be a thrower, they already need to be 2+ or preferably 1+ passing, and those kind of players are going to be really rare. So you're going to see it not very often. But when you do see it on one of those players, it's going to be quite scary. It's going to be quite hard to counter at times. So that's Cannoneer for me in at number 7. Number 6, Dump Off. I know a few people would be unhappy with me putting this as high as it is, but actually, having had it happen against me quite a bit, and when I've run Dark Elves myself, I sometimes forget the runners have it, and so when I have the option to offload the ball before this blitz comes in, it can be useful. So what is Dump Off? If this player is the target of a block action, or an action that replaces a block, and he's carrying the ball, he can immediately make a quick pass that works normally, except that it cannot lead to a turnover. So basically, you get to get rid of the ball before your player gets hit. One of the arguments against it is, well, you shouldn't be allowing your ball carrier to get hit, which is a fair point, but it's not really a realistic point, because at some point your ball carriers get targeted. No matter how much you screen and cage, somebody finds a way in. They'll do a tricky dodge through your lines, or they'll sidestep their way next to you. They'll come up with some device, because that's what we do in Blood Bowl, isn't it? We can't try and work out a way to get to that ball carrier to sack the ball. So just to say, well, you should never let it happen, it obviously does happen. So it can be really useful. But again, like I've said with so many of these skills, it's only useful if you've got someone who can pretty much pass the ball. You don't really want Dump Off going on to somebody who's like a 4+ or 5+ passer. You want it on an elf who can flick it for 2+. Maybe it's a 3+ because they're based, but even so, especially if they've got the pass skill, you've got a reasonable chance of getting that off. And the great thing with elves and possibly Skaven is you've probably got a 2+ catcher waiting to gobble that ball up. Or maybe they don't have catch, but they at least have decent catching ability. So it has its place, and it can be frustrating to play against, which is why I've put Dump Off in the top. Well, in my top 10 and in at number 6. Okay, into the top 5 now, and again, I think that some people would have issue with me placing this as high as it is, but my number 5 pick is Pass. So Pass is really simple. This player can reroll a failed passing ability test on a pass action. So you roll that into your dodge, your catch. It's that baked in reroll for you trying to complete that action. So why do I think people would rate this lower? I think it's because the passing game in itself isn't widely used by most factions. It's kind of become the way to play for only a select number of factions. So in itself, Pass doesn't get seen a lot. And on top of that, most of the players who need Pass often start with it. So it's not often a pass that you'd like to, a skill that you'd be looking to give out. Now, back in 2016, I actually quite liked to grow a little ghoul thrower for my necromantic horror and shambling undead teams, because when it was based on agility, they were half decent throwers. And if you doubled and got the chance to have pass, you could turn them into little throwers, give them sure hands, and they weren't too bad at it. And it does make your opponent think, because they're so used to a certain team playing a certain way. If you've got an alternative tactic that you can draw upon, that can catch people unawares. The downside being, nowadays, really, it's only the throwers who can pass, so that's not going to be that surprising. A lot of them already have pass, but I would say if you're going to regularly pass, it is an essential skill for them, because so you're not eating into your rerolls. If you're an elf team and you've got throwers, you want them to have the pass skill. It's just that most of them come with it anyway. But even so, it is useful to have, and you'd miss it on those players if you didn't have it. Okay, number 4. I think this one is going to be a popular one. Other people probably put it higher, but I'm going to say accurate. So this is the other half of Cannoneer, +1 to passing tests on quick or short. So keep it simple for this one. It just helps the throwers pass the ball better. Simple as that. I don't think anyone comes with it as a starting skill, so you'll often find people choosing accurate fairly early on for their throwers, their bombers, or trying to random a pass. And I don't think many people would sack a thrower who randomed accurate. It's just really useful, because quick and short passing is more viable with the agility teams and the teams with decent passing skills. So yeah, accurate, number 4. Possibly could be higher, but I really like the next 3 skills, so let's see where they are. Number 3, I've gone for leader. So leader, I never can understand why this is in the passing skill tree, and it kind of doesn't always make sense that the leader, or your captain as such, would be a thrower, but I guess it's where they have the gap. But leader grants a team reroll if one or several players with this skill are on the pitch. This team reroll is lost if the players with the skill are removed from the pitch before its use. Can be carried over to extra time if not used. Cannot be lost because of the Halfling Master Chef. So basically, it's another reroll, and actually it's a more TV efficient way of having a reroll, because a 20 20 team value increase on your player is better than the 50 to 70 increase on buying an extra reroll. So it is efficient. The downside is, of course, it's taking up a skill slot, but some throwers don't need a lot to be good at what they can do. And often in tournaments, people will use leader as a player as a leader caddy to carry that extra reroll. So it has a lot of uses, and you'll see quite a few people utilising leader in all forms of Blood Bowl. Number 2, it's on the ball. On the ball, this player can move 3 squares, whatever his movement and respecting moving rules are, when there is a declaration by the opposition manager of a pass action or use of a dump-off skill. This skill can be used after the kickoff by an open player. So yeah, this is your old pass block and kickoff return, all baked into one. And I think it's really useful now. It gets you closer to that ball, and if you're putting it on a thrower or on a player who's going to be running with the ball, it's really, really useful. It gets them moving first, and often these players are going to be pretty good agility-wise, so it's not bad for the when people try and pass the ball. It can allow you to get into intercept range, or allow you to base either the throw or the catcher to make that throw or catch harder. So I love it. I think it's a good little skill. Again, some people wouldn't choose it, but it would be certainly one you'd be happy to random. But I think when I think about players who aren't necessarily throwers, like your Valkyries and from the Norse team, and even my Ghouls, would I be glad of having on the ball on those kind of players? Probably, yeah. It just adds extra movement, and it means that people perhaps trying to force you into a difficult position through the kick having on the ball allows you to close down that gap a little bit. So I'm a big fan of on the ball. I like any skill that allows you to reposition. I find them really, really useful. Okay, so that leaves just one skill for the number 1 slot, and it's Nerves of Steel. There it is. This cancels the marking modifiers on a pass and attempt to catch the ball or interfere. And that's why I like this one, because it's not just about passing or catching or interfering. It's all 3 rolled into one. So it's useful on a thrower, but it's also useful on catchers and a few other players. They may not have the easiest access to this skill if they don't have access to passing, but it's still something that you'd consider. The Elven Union catchers having Nerves of Steel makes them absolute dynamite, because you can flood the opposition field with your players. Only one can get blitzed, and even if they surround you, the actual catching of the ball is being done on a 2+. And if you've got multiple players with that skill in the opposition half, they can't surround all of them. So it really gets your opposition thinking. So pairs up nicely with things like Cannoneer and Cloudburster as well. But again, that is niche to those teams who are going to throw the ball long. But the difference with Nerves of Steel compared to the other two is it can be used for catching as you could hand off to the Nerves of Steel catcher, or it could be that they're trying to interfere. And because it's in the passing skill tree, if you roll that in with on the ball, then that player is able to base somebody or get into intercept range. There's just lots of nice, cool combos that you can make with Nerves of Steel. So I'm a big fan of it. It would be one that I would definitely be looking to have on Elven teams who are looking to throw the ball. But even on a Skaven team, would I want a Nerves of Steel Gutter Runner? Possibly. Not on all of them, but on one of them, it would just be really useful to have that player who is going to be able to receive the ball no matter what on a 2+, no matter where it's coming in from. Okay, so that was my top 10 and a couple of honourable mentions. Obviously, the case with every single one of these, even my number 1, Nerves of Steel, these aren't like block or dodge where you'd be looking to liberally apply them across your team or across several players. All of them have more specific use, and that's the thing with your passing skills. There isn't like one defining skill that you think, wow, that's just amazing. You're going to see these spread out on several players, including things like leader. There's no point in having more than one leader, really, unless you're worried about one of your leaders getting taken off the pitch. It's kind of like a waste after just one. Same goes for like some of the other skills. You wouldn't need more than one player with them. However, particularly if you're an elf dashy speed team, some of these skills can be really, really useful. But just be hesitant on how you use them and which players you put them on, because they're going to come up a lot more infrequently than the skills from the other trees. But nonetheless, that's my top 10 for passing skills. Obviously, if that is different to the way you do them, that's fine. We all love different opinions and different ways of thinking. But obviously, try not to get too emotional about it, as it is just my opinion. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye for now.